My last team here, a team that not many people are talking about, which is kind of why I wanted to talk about them. It's the San Antonio Spurs. It's going to be a youth movement, already has been for some time in San Antonio, just now even more so. Feels like we have cut ties entirely from the past of San Antonio now, with Patty Mills leaving, especially kind of the last remaining member of those teams that beat the Miami Heat. So Patty Mills is gone to Brooklyn, Rudy Gay to the Jazz. They lose, of course, DeRozan to your Bulls. They sign Doug McDermott, which I like. Reasonable value for him at 3 years, $42 million. A guy who can really knock down 3-pointers, as you know, Justin, one of your guys from Chicago.
Sure.
They sign Jock Landale. Forgive me if I'm pronouncing that name wrong, but I wanted to point him out because he's another Olympian on Team Australia. So, a guy that got another an Olympic contract here. Looks to be, I actually have some pretty good potential from what I've been reading, the very little that I've been reading. They get Bryn Forbes from the Bucks. He comes back to San Antonio. I thought that was a good move. I actually really like, and this is polarizing, a lot of people disagree with me, but I like them taking a flyer on Zach Collins from Portland, a guy who had a lot of pedigree when he was drafted from Gonzaga and just has been riddled with injuries. They have him for 3 years. I believe it's $22 million. So basically just taking a flyer on Zach Collins, seeing if there's anything there. I like that. And I think Popovich is the right coach to do that under. So some of the things I like about what the Spurs are doing, I'm not suspecting any sort of success. A lot of people are ripping on them for drafting Josh Primo with the 12th pick when they could have taken so thank you, Spurs, but they could have taken Alperen Sengun there, the Turkish League MVP, who's now a Rocket. They could have taken him there, and that feels like a very Spursy move, but maybe they know something that we don't know. And I guess long story short, there are still lots of moves to be made. They also get Thaddeus Young, Al-Farouq Aminu from that DeRozan sign-in trade. They get 3 draft picks, 2 second-rounders in the future, and 1 first-rounder in the future. So not a big deal there, but they get some stuff for DeRozan when they could have gotten nothing for him by way of that sign and trade. And Thaddeus Young is a guy who you can maybe flip for other pieces or other value. So I think it's interesting what they're trying to build. They have 16 players on this roster right now, so they're not done making moves because you can only have 15 players. We'll see what they do. I find them interesting. The other thing that I'm wondering, and kind of the bigger topic that I wanted to mention, is I wonder, after the Olympics, after the scrutiny, after the stress that Popovich has gone under this past season, the past couple seasons, really, with a lot of headaches that he's had to deal with just on this franchise in general, being a rebuilding team. I wonder how much longer Popovich is going to coach, too. You would think, on the one hand, he is the best, arguably the best talent developer of our generation as far as coaches go in the NBA. But on the other hand, at this stage of his career, does he want to work on developing another team, or does he want to ride off into the sunset at this point? I do question, is this season or next season going to be the last year for Greg Popovich? And Popovich has certainly earned the right to retire when he calls it, when he wants to. And I believe this franchise will give him the right to do that. But I think it's going to be interesting moving forward. Justin, your thoughts on the Spurs?
Not much. You echoed my thoughts on the Spurs. You mentioned Popovich. I think that's going to be kind of the key, right? It seems like it's transitioning everything away from the Popovich era into this new era. I wonder if they're going to hire within with either, Tim Duncan or Becky Hammond as kind of the heir apparent. So I think that's the big question here. I could see, the Spurs struggling, and that can kind of be the cue for Popovich to go into the sunset and, have a new era of this team. I mean, it's been there since the late 90s. So this has been his, the team has been molded into his vision ever since then. So I wonder how that transition is going to play out. I think it's going to be very interesting.
Absolutely. Why don't you give us your last team, Justin?
For sure. My last team is the Miami Heat.
Of course.
This team, I would have to consider their this past season to be a disappointment considering their success in the bubble and everything heading into it. I mean, we discussed, this past season about Tyler Hero's struggles. And it looks like the Heat certainly made a lot of moves. So, excuse me, let's break down first Kyle Lowry. He's headed to Miami. I will be honest, I've always thought Kyle Lowry to be overrated. I like his competitive spirit. I like his heart, but as a massive difference maker, I don't know. I think he'll fit in with Jimmy Butler though, so I think that's a great fit in terms of personality. A lot of people were criticizing the Duncan Robinson signing for 5 years and all that money. So I think that's interesting. Also, yeah, PJ Tucker agreeing to a 2-year deal.
That's a big deal because he's gone from the Bucks now.
Yeah, which is very interesting. Just, I guess he wants to party in South Beach permanently. Because considering you saw him at the parade and him getting down, maybe he just wanted to do that at every home game. We'll have to wait to see there. So you see some other changes there with Markieff Morris. Again, I mentioned Victor Oladipo. I think with the Heat, it kind of reminds me of what you mentioned with the Bulls. Got a lot of old guys on his roster. Like, I don't know. I mean, granted they have Bam, right? But still, has Bam proven to be a massive difference maker in this league? I mean, he's not Joel Embiid. He's not an MVP candidate. So I think with all these guys, it's kind of like you're just mixing all these components and seeing if they work. It reminds me a lot of Chicago, to be honest. Like, I can see it really working out, or I can see it kind of being a complete disaster. I don't really know at this point. But Pat Riley's making moves, as well as Eric Spoelstra. So, that's their deal. But I think their moves make them very compelling. And I think with Kyle Lowry being there, I think they're going to be a team to watch. I put them in the middle of the pack, probably 5 through 8, 6 through 8, around there. But I can see them overachieving too. If things, again, it's so unpredictable because of injuries and just a number of other factors. COVID being a part of our lives now, that's going to be a factor forever, right? Or at least until I hope not forever, but you know what I mean. And the most conceivable future in terms of just, COVID, sit outs, in terms of, let's say, the league is 90% vaccinated. If a guy tests positive for COVID, even if he's fine, he's going to have to sit out. It's just NBA protocol. So I just think, we're under these circumstances, which we're in a new paradigm shift of just sports in general. So I guess what I'm saying is that with these roster changes that we're not only seeing with the Heat, but with other teams, things break your way, you could take advantage of that. So I think that makes the Heat a compelling team to look out for.
Let me ask you this. Freeze rosters right now. Assume everyone's healthy.
Yeah.
Did the Heat leapfrog the Sixers?
That's a good question.
Because you've got Bucks, right? You got to give the Bucks a nod. They'll at least be great in the regular season. The Nets, of course, we talked about them.
Yeah.
Then potentially the Sixers may be better than the Heat for regular season record. Maybe not. The Heat are older. Regular season might be tough for them. I kind of like the idea that they could be the 5th through maybe the 7th seed. I don't see them dropping below that really. But I guess, I'm unsure about these moves by the Heat. I like the signing of Duncan Robinson as long as he continues to improve.
Sure.
I don't want to pay Jimmy Butler $50 million in 4 years. I'm sorry. I like you, Jimmy Butler, but you've got a lot of mileage on you.
It's true.
And I don't know that I want to pay. I get they have to sign him. They have to keep him happy. They have to give him that max deal. But, man, I don't know that I like that in 4 years. But, we're talking about this year. We're talking about a 2-year window or so with this Heat team. I don't think they're close to the Nets. I don't think they're close to competing with them unless we see Bam take a really big leap in terms of what he can do for them and in terms of his skill level improving. So I don't know. I've got a soft spot for the Heat. I like that franchise. I like that team. I just feel kind of meh about this offseason. I don't know that Kyle Lowry is that big of an improvement over Dragic. Maybe he is over Dragic of last year, but Kyle Lowry also kind of shifted down gears a little bit as a player last year. He had an uncharacteristically bad year. Part of the reason that Toronto struggled last year. So we'll see what happens. I don't know about the Heat. Did you have any? I'm putting you on the spot here. I have a couple teams mentioned as sort of like honorable mention, quick fire teams. Do you have any kind of honorable mention teams you want to mention? Maybe not go through their full roster, but just kind of if you're disappointed or happy with anything else the other teams did. Big news right now, guys, as of recording this, is that Kawhi Leonard still hasn't moved. He's the biggest name that's a free agent right now. And he opted out of his player options, so he wants a longer-term deal. From things I've read, it seems he's going to stay in Los Angeles with the Clippers, but you can't pretend to know what Kawhi Leonard's going to do, so that's all hearsay.
That's true.
So let me tell you a few things, and then you can a few of my honorable mentions, Justin, and then you can add on to this.
Sure.
The Hawks are interesting because John Collins is a restricted free agent. We got to figure out what he's going to do. That's going to change the shape of this team big time if he goes somewhere in a sign and trade or otherwise. But of course, Atlanta holds the cards here. I just don't know that, if someone offers him the max, I don't think you want to be paying John Collins the max.
It seems like there's reports that he might have agreed to a deal with the Hawks. From all accounts, via multiple reports, for a 5-year deal. So I don't know if that's in stone, but it seems like he might be staying with them.
Great. I think that's great for Atlanta then.
Yeah.
Assuming they don't kill their cap with that move, but that's good to hear. The other team that a lot of people wanted us to talk about this team, and I kind of want to reserve judgment, the Dallas Mavericks.
Sure.
I just don't know. Like, I think these interesting pieces that you mentioned that haven't been signed yet, like your Lauri Markkanen, like your Dragic, these are players that could fall to Dallas, like your Kelly Oubre's, even guys like that haven't signed yet are guys that may fall in Dallas's lap just simply because they might be looking around and say, "Hey, I'd love to play at least a season with Luka. Let's try this out." So I don't know. Right now, I would give Dallas a bad grade if things were frozen now, but I kind of feel like there's another domino or two that could go. The other thing that I had that I wanted to mention is that the New Orleans Pelicans have really disappointed, just basically not getting anything done. And then, of course, Lonzo Ball leaves the team. I do think that's kind of a big deal for them. I think he could gel well with Zion over the years, and I totally get why Lonzo left to get out of that situation. I think it's going to be much better for him in Chicago, and much more eyeballs on him in Chicago, of course. But I think you've got to be disappointed if you're the Pelicans. If you're a Pelicans fan and you want to keep Zion long-term, not have him end up being another Anthony Davis situation, another Chris Paul situation, it's not looking good for you right now. And that's unfortunate, but that's the way it's gone so far. Of course, we'll see if there are other moves that get made. Any other teams that you wanted to mention before we wrap up?
You pretty much took the words out of my mouth. I think the Hawks are just very compelling to watch and see. I think what you mentioned with the Dallas Mavericks, I mean, you're right. A lot of their moves are not super impressive. And then you have this whole drama with Porzingis and Luka, right? Like, supposedly they hate each other. So I don't know how you're going to resolve that situation. And then also, too, looking at the Denver Nuggets. I mean, I like some of the moves with, I like Austin Rivers as kind of, he's a serviceable player. Jeff Green signs to a 2-year deal. They get Will Martin back. So those were some nice pickups for Denver. I think they had a very disappointing, season. Even though you had the injury to Jamal Murray. I know I want to mention. I think that's it. I'll send it back to you, Matt. Steph Curry signed a 4-year extension. There was a little bit of rumblings about maybe him, maybe leaving or testing out the waters, but he signs the extension. He's locked up. So that's just one note I wanted to point out as well.
Yeah, that's another thing is that the Warriors are potential beasts for next year.
Yeah. Yeah.
So you guys be sure you check out our content, whether you're watching here on YouTube or listening to the podcast. We really appreciate you tuning in. Give us your thoughts in the comments on these free agency teams. Is there an interesting team or storyline that we missed? Who do you guys think are kind of the top contenders going into next year? We'll definitely talk more about that as we get closer to the next season starting. We will have plenty of off-season content to keep you guys entertained. We will have plenty of interviews coming up. Thank you, Justin, for your work on that. We are part of Off the Glass Basketball Podcast Network. OTGbasketball.com is where you can check that out, along with a lot of other great podcasts like our own. We appreciate you guys. That's what I got, Justin. Anything else?
No, that's it. You wrapped it up nicely, Matt. Enjoy the rest of the free agency period. Just because this season is over doesn't mean that we are stopping. So just stay tuned for our feed for more great content. Enjoy the rest of the summer.
Peace.